Old black man humiliated in luxury store, then reveals he owns it. Sir, we don't allow soliciting inside. The outlet mall's down the street. The words hit harder than they sounded. They came from a young white associate in a crisp blue suit, standing behind a glass counter of the Luxe District boutique in downtown Houston, Texas. Her tone was sharp, casual, the kind of voice people use when they've already decided who you are before you've even said a word. Mr. Elijah Carter, a 72-year-old black man, froze for half a second. He wasn't sure what hurt more, the assumption or how easily it rolled off her tongue. He wore his best Sunday jacket, a clean tan hat, polished shoes. He looked like someone's proud grandfather, not a man asking for anything. He gave a polite smile. "I'm not soliciting, ma'am. I'm looking to buy a necklace for my granddaughter. She's graduating from college next week." The associate blinked, taken aback for only a moment before regaining her professional smirk. "Well, these pieces start at over $2,000. Maybe you'd like to check our online store?" Elijah's fingers brushed the edge of the glass case. Inside, diamonds caught the light like tiny stars. "I'd like to see that gold pendant," he said quietly, pointing. Across the store, two other employees exchanged glances, their whispers sharp as paper cuts. "He probably wandered in by mistake," one said. "Maybe he thinks it's a pawn shop," the other giggled. Elijah heard them. He always did. He'd spent a lifetime recognizing that particular kind of laughter, the kind that hid fear behind superiority, but he kept his composure. His mother used to tell him, "Don't let them decide who you are, baby. Let your silence do the talking." Still, the sting ran deep. In his 70 years, he had seen progress, change, even pride in being black in America. But moments like this reminded him that some things hadn't changed enough. He leaned on his cane slightly, feeling the polished wood press against his palm, grounding him. "Miss," he said evenly, "I'd appreciate if you could show me that pendant." The young woman sighed, exaggerated like he was asking her to move mountains. She unlocked the case, lifted the jewelry with two careful fingers, and placed it on the counter. "There you go," she said, her tone sugar-coated but cold underneath. Elijah studied the pendant, a small circle of gold with a delicate diamond at its center. It reminded him of his granddaughter, Maya, who had fought through every obstacle life threw at her to graduate this spring. He imagined her smile, her proud walk across the stage, the tears in her mother's eyes. He smiled. "This one's perfect. I'll take it." The associate blinked again. "You want to? Buy it?" "Yes, ma'am," Elijah said, his voice soft but steady. "Please wrap it nicely." She hesitated. "Of course, if you say so." Her fingers fumbled with the wrapping paper. The other two clerks were no longer whispering, they were watching. The air had shifted, thick with disbelief and quiet judgment. Elijah felt it pressing against his chest, but he stood tall. When she slid the box toward him, she added, "You can pay at the register, sir, but just so you know we only take cards for purchases this large." He nodded. "That won't be a problem." As Elijah turned toward the register, the same two employees leaned close, pretending to adjust a display. "Bet he's gonna ask if we do layaway," one muttered. Their laughter followed him like a shadow. Outside the wide glass windows, Houston's late afternoon sun burned gold against the skyline. Inside, it felt colder than marble. Elijah exhaled slowly, feeling that familiar Achaean ache older than him, older than the city, older than the store itself. He'd felt it as a boy in segregated Mississippi, as a man in corporate boardrooms, as a husband, a father, a grandfather. He whispered under his breath, "Still the same world, huh?" Then he straightened his jacket, lifted his chin, and walked toward the register with quiet dignity. His steps measured, his heart steady. He wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. But what Elijah didn't know, as he stepped out of that boutique with his quiet pride intact, was that this small moment of disrespect would soon flip the entire store and the city upside down. By the time the truth came out, no one would ever look at him the same way again. At the register, the cashier looked up from her phone, chewing gum like she had all the time in the world. Her name tag read, Lindsay. She gave Elijah a quick glance, the kind that sized him up in half a second. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice flat. Elijah placed the small white box on the counter. "I'd like to pay for this pendant, please." Lindsay raised an eyebrow. "That one?" She picked up the box, turned it in her hand, and glanced toward the associate across the room. "This is from the signature line. You sure that's the right piece?" Elijah gave her a patient smile. "Yes, ma'am, that's the one." The other two associates, Haley and Derek, had drifted closer, pretending to rearrange a jewelry stand. Elijah could feel their stares like heat on his back. Lindsay scanned the box, and the price flashed on the screen. $2,183.74. Her voice slipped into something sharp and careful. "Just letting you know, we don't do cash on anything over $500. Corporate policy." "I understand," Elijah said calmly, reaching for his wallet. But she didn't move. Her eyes stayed on him, then on the scuffed leather wallet in his hand. "We've had people try to use fake cards before," she added, almost under her breath. "You wouldn't believe some of the stuff that happens in this city." Elijah's chest tightened. He wanted to say something, to push back. But years of experience whispered otherwise. Don't let them steal your peace. He took out his black platinum card, the one his granddaughter had teased him about. "Grandpa, that card looks like it belongs in a museum." She'd laughed. He'd told her he only kept it for emergencies. This moment qualified. Lindsay's smirk froze the instant she saw it. Her gum paused mid-chew. She swiped the card, her hands suddenly delicate, like she was afraid to break something expensive. "Oh, of course, sir. Let me just, run that through." Derek leaned closer to Haley, whispering, "That can't be real." The machine beeped approved. "Would you like a gift receipt, Mr. Carter?" Lindsay read the name printed on the card. Her eyes flicked up to meet his, searching for clues she'd missed. "Yes, please," Elijah said, voice low and steady. "And maybe a little respect to go with it." The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Lindsay's face flushed red. She stammered, I didn't mean I know," Elijah said softly. "That's what makes it worse." Haley turned away, pretending to fix a display of watches. Derek looked down, silent. The boutique suddenly felt too bright, too quiet. As Lindsay fumbled with the receipt printer, Elijah looked around. The shelves gleamed, the marble floors shined. It was a store that screamed success, exclusivity, prestige, all the things black folks had been told weren't meant for them. He wondered how many times he'd walked into rooms just like this, meetings, fundraisers, hotels, and seen those same guarded looks, always polite, always distant, always questioning if he belonged. The receipt printed with a soft buzz. Lindsay slid the bag across the counter, her hands trembling slightly. "Thank you for shopping with us, Mr. Carter," she managed. Elijah nodded, taking the bag. "You're welcome." He turned to leave, his cane tapping lightly against the floor. But before he reached the door, a voice called after him. "Wait, sir!" It was Haley, the young associate from before. She hurried over, her smile too wide to be real. "My manager wants to talk to you. Just a quick minute." Elijah turned slowly. "About what?" She hesitated. "He just needs to verify something." From the back office, a tall man in a tailored navy suit appeared, Mr. Dalton, the store manager. His smile was corporate perfect. His eyes were not. "Mr. Carter, is it?" he asked, extending a hand. "I'm the general manager here. I understand you purchased one of our premium items?" "Yes," Elijah said, shaking his hand lightly. "Is there a problem?" Dalton chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh no, nothing like that. We just have to confirm large purchases sometimes. Company policy." Elijah's stomach tightened again. Policy. That word always seemed to mean something else when it was aimed at people who looked like him. He met Dalton's gaze, calm and unflinching. "You're welcome to check whatever you need," he said. "The card went through, didn't it?" Dalton nodded, his fake smile slipping a little. "Of course, just making sure everything's in order." There it was, the polite way of saying we don't trust you. Elijah adjusted his hat, his voice soft but firm. It usually is when you treat people right. Dalton blinked, caught off guard by the quiet strength in the old man's tone. He nodded once, stepping aside. Elijah walked past him, the bag in hand, his steps slow but proud. Outside, the Texas air was thick and hot, but he felt a strange calm. He'd been through worse. This wasn't the first time someone doubted his worth. But as he looked down at the gold pendant inside the bag, something in him shifted. This time, he wasn't going to just walk away. Elijah stepped outside, the late afternoon Houston heat pressing against his skin, the hum of traffic mixed with the faint rhythm of a nearby street drummer. He paused at the corner, bag in hand, staring through the glass windows of the boutique he'd just left. Inside, the associates were already laughing again, heads tilted together like nothing had happened. He'd seen that before, how quickly embarrassment turns into denial. Folks like that never thought they were the problem. He moved slowly toward the parking lot, the sound of his cane tapping against the concrete keeping time with his heartbeat. His Cara-clean silver Buick he'd kept for nearly a decade waited beneath the shade of a dying oak tree. As he opened the door, a wave of heat rushed out. He sat down carefully, set the shopping bag on the passenger seat, and took a deep breath. For a long moment, he didn't start the car. His eyes stared straight ahead, but his mind was somewhere far away back in Mississippi, 1964. He was a boy again, no older than 12, standing beside his father in front of a grocery store. A white clerk had told his dad, "You people shop across the tracks." His father didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just looked at the man, nodded once, and said, "One day we'll have our own store." And they did, eventually. His father's hardware shop stood for 30 years before closing, not because of failure, but because his father said he was tired of fighting to prove his worth. Now, decades later, Elijah realized he'd inherited both things from that man, the dignity and the exhaustion. He ran a hand over his face, the skin rough with age and sun. "How many times we gotta earn respect we already paid for?" he murmured. His phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. It was a message from his granddaughter, Maya. "Hey, Grandpa, don't forget the ceremony's at 10 a.m. "You promised not to wear that big hat on stage." Elijah smiled, a small, tired smile that softened the tightness in his chest. Maya bright, bold, unafraid, was everything he'd prayed the next generation would be. She'd faced her share of judgment, too, but she never bowed to it. She called it out, loud and clear. He admired that fire, even if it burned different from his. Still, as he sat there, something in him twisted. He thought of her walking into places like that boutique one day dressed sharp, proud, and still being measured by the color of her skin. He turned the ignition but didn't drive off. Instead, he watched the reflection of the store in his rearview mirror. Inside, he saw Mr. Dalton, the manager standing near the register, his voice calm but his expression hard. Lindsay stood beside him, looking down at the counter. Haley glanced toward the window, locking eyes with Elijah through the glass. She quickly looked away. A familiar heat rose in Elijah's chest, not anger exactly, but something deeper. It was the weight of a lifetime of being dismissed, doubted, and disrespected. He'd buried that weight for years under patience and grace, but right now, it pressed against his ribs like something alive. He could leave, drive home, wrap the gift, pretend none of it happened. But for the first time in a long while, that didn't sit right. He wasn't the same boy who had to stay quiet while his father got humiliated. He wasn't even the same man who'd learned to smile through ignorance just to keep the peace. He was Elijah Carter self-made, self-taught, and self-owned. And maybe it was time those folks inside realized exactly who they'd decided to judge. He looked down at the pendant box again. It glimmered faintly in the sunlight spilling through the windshield. "You deserve better than this world sometimes gives you, Maya," he whispered. Then he took a slow breath, exhaled, and pushed open the car door. His cane touched the pavement first, steady and sure. When he stood up, he wasn't just a man who'd been disrespected, he was a man who'd had enough. He straightened his jacket, adjusted his hat, and turned back toward the boutique. The same glass doors that had closed behind him moments ago would open again, but this time he wouldn't walk in as a customer seeking service. He would walk in as a man demanding accountability. And deep down, He knew that the conversation waiting on the other side of that door wasn't just about a necklace. It was about history, about memory, about every quiet black man who'd ever swallowed his pride to keep his peace. Not today. With that, Elijah took his first step back toward the store, the Texas sun burning bright behind him, his shadow long and unbroken. As Elijah stood under the blazing Houston sun, the sting of their laughter echoing in his chest, something inside him shifted. He could walk away like always, or he could walk back in and finally make them see who he truly was. His next move would change everything. The glass doors of Luxe District boutique whispered open again, the soft chime echoing through the room. The laughter stopped midair. Every head turned. Elijah Carter stepped back inside like he'd never left. Same calm eyes, same quiet grace, but this time his presence carried weight. The air shifted, just enough for everyone to feel it. Haley froze first. "He's back," she whispered. Lindsay straightened, her face pale. Mr. Dalton looked up from the counter, irritation already flickering across his polished smile. "Mr. Carter," Dalton said carefully, stepping forward, "was there a problem with your purchase?" Elijah's voice was steady. "Yes. A big one." Dalton gave a slow, cautious smile. "I see. Well, if something's wrong with the item, we can arrange an exchange or a refund." "It's not about the item," Elijah interrupted, his tone firm but low. "It's about the way I was treated in this store." Lindsay shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting to her co-workers. Haley bit her lip. Dalton kept his professional posture, but his confidence wavered. "Sir, I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding," he said, hands spread in practiced calm. Elijah took one step closer, leaning on his cane. "No misunderstanding. I asked politely to see a pendant. Your staff laughed at me, assumed I didn't belong here, assumed I couldn't afford to shop in my own community." Dalton blinked. Your community?" Elijah nodded slowly, eyes never leaving his. "You see, Mr. Dalton, I was born 200 miles from here, in Jackson, Mississippi. Grew up watching my father build something from nothing. And years later, when I started my own company, I made a promise to myself that I'd make sure our people could walk into any room and be treated like they belonged." Dalton frowned slightly. "Your company?" "That's right," Elijah said. "You've probably heard of Carter Fine Holdings?" Haley's eyes widened. Derek's jaw dropped. Dalton's face went blank. "Carter Fine Holdings, son of the biggest investment firms in the region, known for backing minority-owned businesses and luxury retail expansions. The same firm whose name was printed on the lease contract hanging framed behind the counter." The silence that followed could have frozen the Texas sun. Elijah glanced toward the wall, nodding at the framed certificate. "That document says you're a franchise partner of Carter Fine Holdings, doesn't it?" Dalton's mouth opened, then closed again. He looked like he wanted to disappear. Yes, sir, that's correct." Elijah's expression didn't change. "So, in a way, that means you don't just work for the company, you work for me." Lindsay took a step back, her hand covering her mouth. "I didn't come in here looking for trouble," Elijah continued. "I came in looking for a gift for my granddaughter, but instead I got a reminder of what too many of us still deal with. Being sized up, talked down to, doubted just for existing." Haley spoke up quietly, her voice cracking. "Mr. Carter, we didn't mean to." Elijah turned to her. "That's the thing about meaning well," he said gently. "It doesn't undo the harm." Dalton swallowed hard, trying to regain control. "Sir, please, allow us to make this right. We had no idea who you were." Elijah's gaze sharpened. "And that's exactly the point. You shouldn't have to know who I am to show respect." For a long moment, no one spoke. The tension in the boutique was heavy shame, mixed with realization. Even the music overhead seemed to fade. Then Elijah reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small leather card holder. He slipped out a business card and laid it on the counter. "If you want to make this right," he said, "start with your people. Teach them how to see customers as human beings, not assumptions." Dalton picked up the card, reading the embossed name. Elijah Carter, founder and CEO, Carter Fine Holdings. When he looked up, his voice trembled. "Mr. Carter, please believe me, this doesn't represent our values." Elijah gave a faint, tired smile. "Then prove it. Because your values only matter when they're tested." He turned to leave, cane tapping against the marble floor. But before he reached the door, he paused and glanced back. "And Mr. Dalton," he said softly, "maybe next time someone walks in here wearing the same skin I do, don't assume you already know their story. You might be serving your boss." He walked out into the evening light, the door's chime ringing behind him like a full stop. Inside, no one moved. Dalton stared at the card in his hand, his face pale. Haley looked down, tears brimming. Lindsay leaned against the counter, speechless. The silence left behind was louder than anything they'd said that day. Outside, Elijah adjusted his hat and looked up at the Houston sky, painted gold and pink with the setting sun. He let out a slow breath, feeling a mix of peace and purpose. The world still had a long way to go, but tonight, at least one store had been forced to look in the mirror. He smiled faintly, whispering, "Lesson delivered." "Hi, friend. Before we continue, I need your help. We've noticed the channel losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and helps us keep delivering great content for you. Your support means everything. Comment your city or country below. Let's see how far this community reaches." "Thank you." Now, back to the story. By the time Elijah got home, the Texas sky had faded to a deep violet. Cicadas hummed in the oak trees lining his driveway, their rhythm filling the quiet space as he parked the Buick in the garage. He sat for a moment in the car, staring at the small white bag in the passenger seat. The gold pendant inside gleamed faintly under the dashboard light. It should have been a simple man buying a gift for his granddaughter. Instead, it had turned into a reminder of everything he thought the world had outgrown. He picked up the bag, stepped out, and walked into his house. The air smelled faintly of cedarwood and old books. His home wasn't flashy, but it was solid like him. The kind of house that carried stories in its walls. On the coffee table sat a framed photo of Maya at her college campus, holding up a sign that read, "Representation Matters." Elijah smiled softly. That girl had fire in her veins. He sat down in his favorite chair, placed the bag on the table, and rubbed his hands together slowly. His phone buzzed again, an incoming call from an unfamiliar number. He hesitated, then answered. "This is Carter." A nervous voice came through the line. "Mr. Carter, good evening. This is Dalton, the manager from Luxe District Boutique." Elijah leaned back, silent for a moment. "Mr. Dalton," he said evenly, "I figured I'd be hearing from you." "Yes, sir," Dalton said quickly, his voice tight with unease. "I wanted to personally apologize again for what happened today. It was unacceptable. I take full responsibility for the behavior of my staff." "Do you?" Elijah asked quietly. "Because what I saw wasn't just bad behavior. It was a mindset." Dalton cleared his throat. "You're right, sir. Completely right. I've already filed a report with corporate and scheduled sensitivity and diversity training for the team. We're also drafting a formal apology." Elijah exhaled slowly, the sound deep and tired. "I appreciate that. But this can't just be about checking boxes and saving face. Change doesn't happen because you're caught. It happens because you care." There was a pause on the line. "Yes, sir," Dalton said finally. "I understand." "I hope you do," Elijah replied. "Because the next man who walks in that store might not have my patience, and the next young woman who walks in there might not have the means to prove herself. You owe them better." Dalton's voice cracked. "I hear you, Mr. Carter. I promise it won't happen again." Elijah nodded, though Dalton couldn't see it. "Promises are easy," he said softly. "Let's see action." When the call ended, Elijah placed the phone on the table beside the pendant bag. The house was quiet again, but the weight in his chest hadn't lifted. He turned on the TV, flipping through the channels until he stopped on a local news station. A breaking segment caught his attention. Luxe District Boutique faces backlash after alleged discrimination incident. His own name wasn't mentioned, but the story was clearly about what had happened earlier that day. The reporter's voice was calm but pointed, describing how a senior black customer had been dismissed and belittled by staff members. The camera showed clips of people on the street giving their opinions. "That's not right," one woman said. "You can't judge people by how they look." "Man, that happens all the time," another man added. "Just glad someone finally called them out." Elijah muted the TV and leaned back, shaking his head. He hadn't gone back in there to make a scene, but it seemed the story had made one for him. He closed his eyes and let out a low sigh. Maybe it was time. Maybe this was the push the company needed. The next morning, he woke early. The sun poured through the blinds, painting soft stripes across the room. He made his usual black coffee, then sat at his desk to write a short email to his communications director. "Robert, you've probably seen the news. Let's not hide from it. Prepare a statement for our company's website. I want it honest, not polished. We'll address the issue directly and outline real steps for improvement. This isn't about me, it's about what we stand for." E. Carter. He hit send and looked out the window, watching the city come to life. Cars rushed down the street. Kids waited at bus stops. The world kept moving. But he knew that, for some people, today would move differently. Conversations would start. People would question themselves. Maybe that was how change began, not with speeches, but with discomfort. Later that afternoon, as Elijah was leaving his office, his assistant stopped him. "Sir, there's a courier here. Says it's from Luxe District." She handed him a small box wrapped in gold paper. A note was attached. "Mr. Carter, we wanted to apologize in person, but we understand if that's not welcome. Inside is a token of our respect and our regret. We're committed to doing better from today forward. The Luxe District team." Elijah opened the box slowly. Inside wasn't jewelry this time. It was a polished brass plaque engraved with the words, "Respect is luxury." For the first time in days, Elijah let out a genuine laugh. Not because it was funny, but because, in a strange way, it was right. He picked up the plaque, set it next to the pendant box, and whispered, "Now that's worth more than gold." He didn't need revenge. He'd already gotten something better, recognition, accountability, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of change. And as the Texas sun dipped low again, Elijah Carter smiled quietly, knowing the fight for dignity never ended. But this time, it had taken a small step forward. A week passed before Elijah finally slowed down long enough to breathe. The whirlwind that followed the boutique incident had been louder than he ever intended. News outlets called nonstop. Reporters waited outside his office building. Some praised him for his composure. Others spun the story into something bigger, an inspirational tale of perseverance. But Elijah didn't see himself as a hero. He saw himself as a tired old man who'd had enough. That Friday evening, he sat on his front porch with a cup of sweet tea, the air thick with the smell of magnolia and barbecue from down the street. His neighbor, Marcus, waved from across the lawn. "You really shook up the city, Mr. Carter," Marcus called out with a grin. Elijah chuckled. "Didn't plan to, son. Sometimes life just hands you a microphone you didn't ask for." Marcus laughed and crossed the yard, leaning against the porch railing. Still, it meant something. Folks been talking about it all week. You gave people a reason to speak up. Elijah looked out toward the sunset, the sky streaked orange and deep red. If it made even one person think before judging another, then it was worth it. He thought back to that plaque the boutique had sent, "Respect is luxury." He'd mounted it on his office wall right beside a photo of Maya as a little girl, sitting on his shoulders during a community parade. The world had changed a lot since then, but not enough. Later that night, his phone rang. Maya's name flashed across the screen. "Hey, Grandpa," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "You've been all over social media. Everyone's talking about what happened." Elijah smiled softly. "I've noticed. They called you a legend, Grandpa. People are saying you handled it like a true boss." He laughed under his breath. "That's one word for it. I just handled it the only way I knew how, with calm." "But calm isn't easy," Maya said, "especially when people treat you like that. You didn't yell, you didn't curse, you just told the truth. That hit different." Her words warmed him more than the tea ever could. "I learned a long time ago, baby girl, anger burns fast. but dignity lasts. There was a pause. I want to be like that, Maya said softly. I want to make people listen without having to raise my voice. Elijah leaned back in his chair, his heart swelling with pride. Then you already got everything you need. Just remember, the fight don't always have to be loud. Sometimes it's the quiet ones that echo the longest. He heard her sniffle a little, then laugh to cover it up. You always know what to say. That's just years of learning the hard way, Elijah replied. The next morning, he drove to the University of Houston for Maya's graduation ceremony. The campus buzzed with energy families cheering, students in red robes hugging and posing for pictures. Elijah found his seat among the crowd, the pendant box tucked carefully in his coat pocket. When Maya walked across that stage, her smile was brighter than the Texas sun. Elijah clapped until his hands ached. She spotted him in the crowd, waving that same proud wave she used to give him when she was a child. After the ceremony, she ran to him, breathless and glowing. "Grandpa, I did it!" He held out the little box. "You earned this!" She opened it and gasped, eyes wide. "It's beautiful," he smiled. "It's a reminder of everything you are and everything you come from. Wear it when you need to remember your worth." She threw her arms around him, holding on tight. "Thank you, Grandpa, for everything." As they stood there, surrounded by the noise and laughter of new beginnings, Elijah felt something ease inside him. For years, he'd carried the weight of the world's assumptions, the sting of invisible lines drawn by strangers. But seeing Maya, strong and unstoppable, he knew that burden was finally lighter. That evening, they sat together at a small restaurant near the bayou. The pendant sparkled around her neck, catching the warm glow of the lights. Maya told him about her plans law school, community work, giving back to the neighborhoods that raised her. Elijah listened, smiling. "You're gonna do big things," he said. She nodded. "Because of you." He chuckled. "No, because of you. You're the next chapter, Maya. Just promise me one thing. Anything. Don't let the world tell you who you are. Make it see you for who you already are." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Deal. When they left the restaurant, the night was calm. The city lights shimmered off the water and a cool breeze brushed against Elijah's face. For the first time in a long while, he felt peace deep. Lasting peace. As they walked toward the car, Maya linked her arm through his. "Grandpa," she said softly, "you think people ever really change?" Elijah thought for a moment before answering. "Maybe not all at once," he said. "But every time somebody stands their ground with grace instead of hate, the world shifts a little." She smiled. "Then we keep shifting it." He looked at her, proud and full of hope. "That's right, baby girl, one step at a time." And as they drove off into the Houston night, Elijah Carter knew the legacy he was leaving behind wasn't written in wealth or reputation. It was written in resilience, in kindness, and in the quiet power of never letting the world steal your dignity. A few months later, the heat of summer began to fade into the softer air of September. Houston felt slower, calmer. Elijah sat by his living room window, sunlight spilling across the floor, his cane leaning beside his chair. The gold pendant still gleamed around Maya's neck in the photo framed on his mantel, her smile wide, her future bright. The news about the boutique had long faded from the headlines, but its echo lingered. Across the city, people still talked about the old man who owned the company. Some stores had even started new customer inclusion programs because of it. The phrase, "respect is luxury," had found its way onto posters, billboards, even T-shirts. Elijah didn't care about the fame. What mattered was that people were listening. That morning, he received a letter from Luxe District's corporate office. Inside was a short note handwritten by Mr. Dalton himself. "Mr. Carter, since that day, our entire team has changed how we do business. We started mentorship programs for young employees, hired more diverse staff, and built partnerships with local communities. I just wanted to say thank you for holding up the mirror we were afraid to look into." Sincerely, Dalton Elijah read the words twice, then set the letter down beside the brass plaque. "Respect is luxury." He smiled to himself, a small, quiet kind of pride, the kind that comes not from victory, but from peace. That evening, Maya stopped by after work, still wearing her pendant. "Grandpa, they asked me to speak at a youth leadership event next week," she said, beaming. "They want me to talk about what happened and what I learned from it." Elijah chuckled. "You sure you want to make your old man famous again?" Maya grinned. "You already are, but I want them to know it wasn't about fame. It was about change." He nodded, eyes soft. "Then you go tell them that, baby girl. Tell them it's not about what the world calls you, it's about what you answer to." They sat together for a while, the hum of the ceiling fan mixing with the low sound of a blues record spinning in the background. The music filled the spaces between their words, gentle, soulful, like time itself was slowing down. Maya leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know, Grandpa," she said quietly, "sometimes I think God puts us in the right places just to wake people up." Elijah looked out the window at the sinking sun. Maybe so. Or maybe he just reminds us that light shines brightest after someone tries to dim it. Maya smiled. "That's beautiful." He shrugged lightly. "Just life talking, baby." The sky outside turned gold, then deep orange, fading into dusk. Elijah closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the calm. He knew the world would keep turning, that ignorance and prejudice would still exist, but he also knew something else. Every act of dignity, every moment of quiet strength, pushed back against the darkness a little more. He'd done his part. Now, it was her turn and the turn of everyone listening, everyone watching, everyone tired of being unseen. Elijah opened his eyes, smiling faintly. "Keep walking proud, Maya," he said softly. "That's how we win." She squeezed his hand. "Always, Grandpa." Outside, the cicadas began their evening song. The house glowed in the warm light of memory, legacy, and love. And as the night settled in, one truth lingered, a truth bigger than one man or one store. Dignity isn't something the world gives you. It's something you decide never to lose. Hi, friend. If this story moved you, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to the channel, it's free. And it helps us share more stories that matter. Comment below where you're watching from, and let's see how far this community reaches. And if you believe in spreading dignity and respect, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Thank you for being part of the story.